Hey, tailgaters! Ross of the Pigskin Tales podcast here. The buzz of summer and the anticipation of the college football season is in the air. It's the perfect time to gear up with Home Field, a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They have over 150 plus college designs to choose from, each one showcasing a unique part of your team's history. My personal experience with Home Field has been exceptional. Their apparel is comfortable and their vintage designs bring back fond memories of my alma mater. So as the excitement for the upcoming college football season builds, make sure to visit Home Field's website at homefieldapparel.com. Get ready today for the upcoming season and represent our favorite teams in style with Home Field. Again, that's homefieldapparel.com.
This is Basketball History 101 with Rick Loayza.
Welcome back to Basketball History 101. We are a proud member of the Sports History Network, and today I have a special guest with me, my good friend Dana Auguster from the Historically Speaking Sports podcast. As you know from listening to Basketball History 101 that I am a diehard Lakers fan. I bleed purple and gold. I've mentioned that every now and then on my episodes, but I wanted to bring Dana on because I wanted to talk about Bob Cousy, and Dana is a diehard Celtics fan.
Yes.
And yet, despite the fact that I'm with the Lakers and he's with the Celtics, we still can agree on what we love about basketball.
We agree to
Dana,
disagree.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for letting me on, man. I really appreciate that. You know, being a diehard Celtic fan, like I've been a Celtic fan since I was like 10, 11 years old, following Larry Bird and Dennis Johnson and those guys. You know, I've been a diehard Celtic fan, and Bob Cousy is actually one of my heroes. You know, I never saw him play, but I've heard stories and watched film, and I just love his style. And I think that, you know, doing some research, I found some interesting things about Mr. Cousy that is pretty interesting, to say the least, especially in his early part of his career.
Yeah. Now, this for my audience, this is a follow-up to a two-part episode that we did a couple of weeks ago. But would it be, Dana, would it be a stretch to say that Bob Cousy kind of created the blueprint for the modern point guard?
He basically was the blueprint for the modern point guard. I mean, he was it. When you talk, first of all, you have to understand Bob Cousy, where he's from. He's from New York City. And New York City is the hotbed of point guards. I mean, you think of everybody from Rod Strickland and Kenny Smith and, you know, those guys, you know, Kenny Anderson. Those guys came from the streets of New York City playing basketball, and especially point guard. And it all goes back to Cousy, because Cousy's grew up in New York City, grew up in Queens, playing in the playgrounds of New York City, and that's where a lot of his dazzling ball handling came from. His playing, and there's a very interesting story about Cousy and how he developed his playing style. And the best way to describe it is this: when he was 13 years old, right? He fell out of a tree. He was climbing a tree with some friends or whatever, and he fell. Now, he was already playing basketball for his junior high team. He falls out of a tree and breaks his hand. He's right-handed, so he breaks his right hand. So he's pretty much out for the year. But he continues to practice, but he practices with his left hand. So he became so good with his left hand that he became pretty much ambidextrous, which is an essential part of the point guard position. You have to be able to use both hands, shooting, passing, dribbling, that sort of thing. And so he was kind of like a pioneer of that, as he would consider it, by accident. He didn't intend on it happening, but that's how it happened to be.
Yeah, no, that's an incredible part of his story. But the other part I think is that was so interesting about Cousy as he was coming up in New York, as you said, was that he always seemed to be underestimated. Now, the part that gets me is like, have you seen this kid play? He's good. But one of the things I found out is that when he went to high school, he didn't even make the team as a freshman, and maybe that had to do with the broken hand, but he doesn't really play a lot until his senior year, which to me seems kind of crazy that you wouldn't play this kid until he's a senior. But it seems like the way he dribbled, his flashy style might have had something to do with it. I don't know.
It had everything to do with it. In my research, I realized that the coaches knew that he was good enough to be a high quality basketball player. But the problem was that he did not fit the style of play that they wanted. You got to remember, this is the mid to late 1940s when he's in high school and eventually goes to college at Holy Cross. And basketball in the 1940s is nothing like what you see today. Everything was in the half court. It was a very static game, very low scoring. Of course, no shot clock, but still low scoring nonetheless. It was all half court. Then you get this kid from New York City with the flashy ball handling, the behind the back passes, the fancy dribbling. And the coaches really didn't think that he was capable of getting to play in the style that they wanted, essentially. So the problem was that it wasn't the fact that he wasn't good enough, because everybody could see that he was good enough. The problem was that they didn't know if he had the discipline to play in the style that they were accustomed to coaching. And that was the big knock on him. They thought he was a hot dog. They thought he was a ball hog, too much of a showboat, which is the word that was used back in those days. So that was the problem that Cousy had to deal with, was the fact that he played a different type of ball that they wasn't used to. He played more of a street ball, that was played in the parks in New York City and in Queens and wherever in Metro New York. And they wanted a more of a traditional style. And that really didn't jive with what they were trying to do in the school basketball that he was trying to be a part of.
Yeah, Cousy was just ahead of his time in many ways, because in the 40s, when he was playing in the 40s, I mean, that's when guys were still taking two-handed set shots. I mean, this is the era that we're talking about, that he was trying to, not that he was purposely trying to take it to the next level, but he was just doing something that really wouldn't be commonplace for at least another decade or decade and a half.
Whenever I think about this, and when I was doing my research on this, and I was thinking that, and I was reading that a lot of coaches really didn't think that he was good enough, because I was thinking, this kid, I've seen film of him play, and I'm like, this guy could really dribble, he could shoot, he could pass, he could do all of those things, but why didn't anybody want it? Then I thought about it. It's like, was he tall enough? And I looked at him, he's 6'1". So 6'1" point guard in the 40s and 50s, that's not the case, because that's a pretty good size for a point guard in those days. So that can't be it. So doing some more digging and some more research, I found out that it wasn't the height or it wasn't the lack of talent, because obviously he had the talent and he had the size. It was the style that concerned coaches. They wasn't sure that they could pretty much keep him in this sort of box that the point guard was supposed to be in, was basically a floor general and pass the ball. From the basically two-hand chest pass, or just a simple bounce pass or whatever. He could do all of those things, but he could just do it with a little bit more flair. But they didn't want to have anybody that kind of would show up, that would show up his teammates or whatever with his immense talent. That sort of thing. So I think that was the main reason why he didn't play until his senior year. And when he came out, when he played his senior year, he lit everything on fire.
Yeah, I think he was like the New York City Player of the Year or something like that, or like a all-city type player. And he does play well enough that he gets the attention of the College of the Holy Cross in the Boston area. And He goes there to play. And again, he's almost in the same situation again, where he barely plays until he's a senior again. And I think it's just kind of it's a repeat of the same story from high school. Right.
Now, going back to his high school, he dropped 28 points in his very first game in high school as a senior. First game, first start, 28 points. He was named captain of the Journal American Scholastic basketball team of New York City. Okay, so not only was he a great basketball player, he was also good in the classroom, which I love. He goes to Holy Cross, which is located in Worcester, Massachusetts. Okay, and the same thing happens. The coach there, Doggy Julian, devised the system where he basically had two starting teams, and Cousy was on the second starting team as a freshman, I believe it was. But he hated coming off the bench so much. And he really despised coming off the bench because he knew he was better than the players that was ahead of him or whatever. Cousy went to the school's chapel and prayed that the coach would give him more playing time. Okay. And he basically bided his time. Finally, senior year comes around. Now, by the way, Holy Cross was not, when he was a freshman, was not a garbage team or a scrub team or anything else. They went 24-3 that year and ended up winning the national championship by beating Oklahoma. So the whole two platoon system that Coach Julian was pulling off at Holy Cross was, for lack of a better term, impressive enough to win a national title. But they became the first New England team to win it all. And this was in 1947. He didn't play a lot of the sophomore, and he was about to transfer after his sophomore year. He got so fed up with being coming off the bench at Holy Cross that he actually wrote St. John's and the coach, legendary coach Joe Lapchick of St. John's, say, I want to transfer to your school. What do I need to do? He said, son, I would love to have you, but it's a risky move because back then, if you transferred, you have to sit out a year. So I don't think that's a good idea for you. And besides, Coach Julian is a great coach, and I know he's not doing this purposely. I know he's not. I've been knowing him for a long time. He's not doing this purposely. So finally, he gets a chance. And of all places, he finally gets to start in Boston, of all places. And the crowd already knew him. The game was in Boston Garden, and they started chanting, "We want Cousy, we want Cousy," because they already know who he is. He'd been doing all of these things coming off the bench, and they love him. And what happens? He goes off. Okay, but his style of play was the thing that really kept the coaches from really believing in him. It was his style of play, but everybody could see he got talent, and it was a type of talent that he had that a lot of people were just so enamored with. They just loved his style, and that style, you see his style in Pete Maravich, and then later guys like Isaiah Thomas, and then later on with one of my all-time favorite players, Jason Williams. You saw all that. You saw whenever you see those guys with the fancy passes and behind the back, no look, all of that begins with Cousy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was an incredible player. I think he was an All-American his senior year at the Holy Cross. And, he really put himself in a position to be a top NBA pick. And that's what he was looking forward to. But then something else kind of quirky happens when the 1950 draft rolls around, and he's not as attractive as he thought he was. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and we'll take a break, and we'll be right back with the rest of the story when Bob Cousy got drafted in 1950. We'll be right back after this.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
At the Sports History Network, we're all about sports yesteryear, and so we're so pleased to introduce you to Row One, an online memorabilia gallery and shop that brings your sports history to life anywhere. The Row One gallery includes over 5,200 gorgeously reproduced prints of team posters, game program covers, game tickets, advertisements, and more in baseball, pro and college football, pro and college basketball, and more. And any gallery item may be printed in a variety of sizes on wood, metal, canvas, acrylic, or poster paper. And in Row One shop, check out the thousands more of unique unique items with the retro and historical designs dating back to 1876, including t-shirts, long-sleeve shirts, phone cases, mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com, ROW1, for access to the full Row 1 catalog and for gallery prints and gift items, plus get a 15% discount off all prints on the Row 1 Pictorium Gallery with coupon code SHN15. Follow the link on the show notes.
Hi, everybody. Dan and Andrew from Hello Old Sports here. We wanted to drop in and let you know about our latest episode.
That's right. We interviewed the co-authors of Phyllis George, Shattering the Ceiling, a biography of groundbreaking broadcaster Phyllis George. And her life is really sort of a journey through 20th century America, from Miss America pageants to the Kentucky State House to the groundbreaking NFL Today show on CBS, even the Kentucky Colonels of the old ABA. We got into all sorts of stories about the Celtics under Red Auerbach, about the interview with Roger Staubach, about really all sorts of things, a fight between Brent Musburger and Jimmy the Greek. We really enjoyed talking with Lenny Shulman and Paul Volpone, who teamed up to write this book.
The book is on sale right now, wherever books are sold. But, within reason. Garage sales, probably not. So go ahead and pick up a copy today. And if you want a chance to win the book, you can go to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways and register for a chance to win. Goodbye, old sports.
Well, welcome back to the show. The career of his college career. And now 1950 is rolling around. It's time for the NBA draft. And Bob Cousy was fully expecting that he would be taken in with a territorial pick by the Boston Celtics because they were just down the road from Holy Cross. But that's not exactly what happened. They have brand new coach. The Celtics bring in a new coach in Red Auerbach, and he's got some different ideas for how he wants to build this Celtics team. So I don't know if you saw who they did go with, but if you've got that,
well, the Boston fans
share that, Dana.
Boston fans wanted Cousy, and Cousy wanted to play in Boston. I mean, in that game that I alluded to earlier, he hits the game-winning shot again. Hits a buzzer beater against the Loyola Chicago when they were chanting, "We want Cousy." He hit the game-winning shot. He scores 11 points, but hits the game-winner buzzer beater against Loyola Chicago. So he's automatically a folk hero in Boston, and he wants to stay in Boston because, he's went to college there. He's familiar with the area, all of that. Unfortunately, Red Auerbach has different ideas. So they draft a guy by the name of Charlie Scher. And Cousy is like, I thought they were going to draft me. But he ends up going to the Tri-City Blackhawks, which is basically a territorial team that was located in Illinois. Tri-City was Moline and Davenport, Iowa, Moline, Illinois, and another city. But they all combined to host this one NBA team. And that's just the way the NBA was back then. So Cousy was like, okay, I need to get out of this because I don't want to play there and I don't want to move to the Midwest. So what he ends up doing is that he starts his own business as, teaching people how to, like a driver education course. He's teaching people how to drive cars and stuff in Boston. And so the owner of the Blackhawks, Ben Kerner, says, we drafted you. You say, yeah, I know you drafted me, but can you, in order for me, I have to stop my business in order to play for you. And so Kerner was like, well, how much are you looking for to sign? He said, I need $10,000. I think Kerner probably fell out of his chair when he said that, because $10,000 in early 1950s when he was drafted by Tri-Cities was a lot of money. So I'll sign you for $6,000. He said, no. So he didn't sign. So he did not sign. So he ended up going to this other team, the Chicago Stags, still in the Midwest. But the Chicago Stags had a major problem. They were about to fold. Okay, this is a team that was about to go out of business. So what ends up happening is, to kind of fast forward a little bit, the Stags go out of business. And so teams get to pick in something called a dispersal draft, which is basically the team that's going out of business. They put their players on basically like a draft, and teams get to pick from those players. There were 3 players that were on that dispersal draft. Cousy, Max Zaflosky, and another guy by the name of, Andy Phillip. Okay. The owner of the Celtics, Walter Brown, was like, we want Zaflosky, period. There are 3 guards, basically. So basically, they had to say, we want him, but the last person we want is Cousy. That is the absolute last person we want. So as it turned out, puts his hand in the hat, pulls out the name on a piece of paper, Cousy. Walter Brown said he nearly fell out of his chair. The last person we wanted. And he joins the Celtics, and as they say, the rest is history. He leads the Celtics to 8 NBA. He leads them to 6 NBA championships. He's league MVP in 1957, 13-time All-Star, including making an All-Star team his first year with the Celtics, 2-time NBA All-Star MVP, 10-time first-team All-NBA, and he's one of only 4 people to be on the NBA anniversary team for the 25th, 35th, 50th, and 75th year anniversary teams. One of 4 players to be on 4 of those teams. So it wasn't that bad, Walter, when you picked out of his name out of that. It ended up being it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it all worked out for this. And this is what I get frustrated with as a Lakers fan, knowing you're a Celtics fan, is like that they lucked into that. The Celtics did everything they could to not get Cousy. And then they get Cousy, and everything that you just mentioned, one of the greatest players of all time, wins 6 championships. I mean, by the way, the Tri-Cities Blackhawks are now in where you are as the Atlanta Hawks.
The Atlanta Hawks, exactly right. That's exactly right. They went to St. Louis not too long after that. They could have the St. Louis Hawks, and they defeated the Celtics in the finals in 57, in 58. Mm-hmm. In 1958, in one of the most underrated Game 7s of all time, that went to overtime, I believe it was, that St. Louis ended up winning in St. Louis, I believe. No, I take that back. That was the Celtics' first championship they won in double overtime against St. Louis. The next year, they couldn't stop Bob Pettit. But the Hawks stayed in St. Louis until the 1967-68 season, and they moved to Atlanta, and then the rest is history. They've been a mediocre franchise ever since. But going back to Cousy, I mean, he was, to borrow a phrase, whenever I think about Cousy and those Celtic teams of the 1950s and 60s, of how they were so ahead of their time. When you think of fast break, and everybody think of the Lakers of the 80s with the fast break and the Showtime and everything else. All of that began with the Celtics of the 60s. And Cousy was the ignition switch for that team. Auerbach fueled the tank. Russell was the power of that engine, but the real driver of that team was Cousy, because the fast break was always initiated with a block or a rebound by Russell, outlet to Cousy. Cousy dribbled twice, pitch it off to Heinsohn, or pitch it off to Sash Sanders, or to Casey Jones or Sam Jones or whatever, and they were on their way. They were rolling from that point on. So he was the focal point of that Celtic fast break outfit.
And the focal point is exactly what Bob Cousy was. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, the ball went through Bob Cousy to make the Celtics fast break something that the league had never seen before. I want to thank my good friend Dana Auguster from the Historically Speaking Sports podcast. If you have a chance, check out his show. Just like us, he is part of the Sports History Network. Dana takes us back into the history of North American sports as he covers American football, basketball, hockey, and just about anything with a historical significance. That's Historically Speaking Sports. And join us next time when we share the story of the creation of the Air Jordan basketball shoe. It was a huge gamble on the part of Nike at the time. Of course, that gamble worked out quite well. That's next time on Basketball History 101, part of the Sports History Network, the headquarters of sports yesteryear. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com to find out more about this and other sports history podcasts. If you like what you hear, please hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And check out our page on Facebook. It's called Basketball History 101 Podcast. There you will find shorter historical posts as well as comments and discussion starters on today's game. I'll also announce there when new episodes come out. I want to thank my producer and editor, Jacob Loayza. Join us each week as we continue to mine the history of basketball for more great stories from the past. Take care, and see you soon.
Hey there, sports history fan. Hope you enjoyed another nostalgic episode here on the Sports History Network. By now, you've heard us rave about two books, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget and NBA 75, The Definitive History. Have you snagged your copies yet? If so, well, we applaud you for great taste. But if you haven't, well, listen up, because our generous partners over at Firefly Books are giving away a free copy of each book to one of our dedicated fans. To enter the giveaway for your chance at winning one of these awesome books, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/giveaways. Good luck, and remember, you can come back daily to earn more entries.